Hi there, welcome everyone of Sermon 5 of Procure to Pray. I'm joined live from Las Vegas by Dan Tunnicliffe, procurement and systems specialist that has worked at the likes of Rolls-Royce and Coupa and is now leading the AI procurement revolution at Pactum AI. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Carl. Good to be here, mate. And yeah, as we were saying just before we came on, really looking forward to getting into this discussion, and I've enjoyed what you're doing so far on Procure to Pay.
Thank you very much. Well, I mentioned your potted career history there. I know we go back a few years already, so we know each other. Made a slight joke around the Rolls-Royce thing because it always came up, but I think it was always relevant in your conversations. It wasn't just name dropping, right? But can you briefly just tell the listeners that don't know you how you got involved in procurement and then how that maybe sparks your interest in AI technology?
So I think, like a lot of people in procurement, and by that I do mean actually as a practitioner of procurement initially, in a lot of the times we sort of fall into it. And that was the same for me. It was actually coming out of university, looking for opportunities, and being local to Rolls-Royce, there was an opportunity there, or there was a few in the kind of graduate space, and one was in procurement. And it looked interesting and kind of spoke to what my enjoyment of working with lots of varied stakeholders and people across businesses and being somewhat of a generalist in what I was doing. And so I liked that idea when I talked to a few people that were doing procurement. And yeah, from there, we're now, 15, 16, probably more if I actually did the maths, years into me being in the procurement business and still enjoying working with procurement day in, day out.
So I think you must have, over that 15 years, seen massive changes in the way that technology is playing a role in procurement. I mean, what was the things like when you joined on day one of Rolls-Royce? What were the tools? Was it Excel or what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm smiling here, Carl, because I'm thinking back of your first procurement brain. I'm thinking, yeah, we did have computers, Excel, and the internet when I was there, but yeah, it was very much Excel. It was actually one of the first courses or the first things we were all forced to do was ERP Essentials, it was called, and it was all about how basically the ERP was the backbone and it was the business on IT, and it was the everything. And so it was kind of ERP was everything in procurement with Excel power on top of that. And then those that were really good had just got into the PowerPoint thing. And I think the consultants hadn't quite been everywhere and shown how good they could do PowerPoint. So not everyone was quite that neat with it.
And then over the years after that, I know obviously we worked together for Coupa. I say, I'll name drop. It's my podcast. I can do what I like. But obviously that's had a big impact on the way procurement's done. And leading on to my first real question to you is thinking about AI in B2B procurement. What are the ways that you can see AI being utilized right now in business-to-business procurement? And maybe just a little bit about where you work right now.
Yeah, sure. So, I'll answer the questions in order. It's right across the value chain that AI is working. And I also want to start when we talk about AI, and it's not for people to jump to it being ChatGPT. As a general concept, artificial intelligence is something it's being used and has been being used for a number of years across procurement, and it's right the way through from data and analytics through sourcing and contracting and more and more even these days around risk and understanding your suppliers better, getting into the sort of requesting and ordering workflow process, and even in invoicing and payments, I gets used a lot. And I think what's happening more and more now is that the power of AI and what it's capable of doing, and also the interest, and some of that is the hype, if you will, is driven by kind of people seeing what the capabilities of ChatGPT and other kind of large language models can do, is driving more and more interest in how can we do more in procurement. And that's kind of where it's got to me. So is, as you say, no longer with Coupa, now working for Pactum AI myself. So we're in the business of autonomous negotiation, so helping companies reach further with what they can do with procurement teams and do more with suppliers. And the simple concept is that any negotiation drives more value both for the customer and the supplier in that interaction. It creates more for both parties, and nobody has enough resource within their business within their procurement teams to negotiate everything that could be negotiated. And so how do you extend your teams without just hiring, which no procurement team has ever been allowed to do, and certainly not in the current landscape. And so that's where we come in with Pactum AI to help organizations scale and drive value at massive scale.
And what are what's the main sort of selling point and benefit to that? What are the benefits that businesses can derive from incorporating AI into their procurement processes? And as a part two to that, what challenges might they also face? Do they need to adopt any kind of technology at their end in order to interact with a vendor that might be, putting out a tender via AI?
So I think, if I'll answer the question more generally to begin with, in terms of what can people get out of it as a benefit, and this is AI across the patch. It's being able to scale further, to be able to dive deeper into things and to be able to produce things of better quality, because the ability of having AI as a tool gives procurement people the ability to do a lot more, do it a lot better. I'll take examples outside of Pactum because I don't want to just focus on that generally, but I can come into Pactum as well. I don't just want this to be a kind of sales pitch. But outside of that, if you take something like data, so whether it be at Coupa with AIC, I mean, it's in the name with the AI classification thing to talk to what we've done before, whether you look at Cievo, there's others out there. Procurement data has been a pain like forever. But now with artificial intelligence, you can actually drive the normalization, the standardization, the simplification of data. And that just amplifies what procurement can do. It means you can do better deals with suppliers. It means you can reach into stakeholders with a more knowledgeable footprint. I mean, when I first joined, to come back to the Rolls-Royce point, it was, I would say, common. Maybe I'm overdoing it, but certainly not unheard of to reach out to the supplier to understand how much you've spent with them, or at least make sure you're talking about the same thing. Yeah. You don't need to do that anymore. You're coming with a confidence in your data. And that's not because people have sat and churned through Excel after Excel after Excel line to try and normalize it. It's because AI can do it. So it's driving all of that. It's the ability to do more, to do things better, and to go even deeper. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with Pactum as well, is we're trying to help organizations do more negotiations, have better interactions with suppliers, and to drive deeper savings and go deeper into their supply chain. The simple premise with most procurement, the Pareto principle, basically with most procurement teams, you focus on the 20% of your suppliers that cover the 80% of the spend. With massive organizations, with Fortune 500 and huge global corporations that we both get to work with, that 20% of untouched spend, and that's if and that's a good procurement organization, right? That's only got 20% untouched. Yeah, be honest about that. That's still a massive amount of spend that's not getting touched. So with Pactum, what we're trying to do is help organizations reach into that, do more with it, get more value out of it, but also increase the interaction with those suppliers and get more out of it for those suppliers as well. And then as we do that, naturally we sort of work our way up that value chain, and category managers use us more and more to do a better job, but that's the phrase that's coming into mind, a better job with some of the lower level contracts or things that they may have still handled, but then we free them up to do a really good job on the high end stuff. Yeah.
So it's giving some time back, I guess, to the procurement staff to focus on sort of the big fish, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to help them to do the stuff they couldn't do, and then free them up to do a better job of the stuff that they really, really want to do. Yeah. So we can just pick up everything else as a bot, and we're sort of endlessly scalable, right? That's the joy of any robot or artificial intelligence, if you will.
Yeah. And I think sort of that leads on nicely to my next question, which is around that supplier relationship. So a lot of those suppliers in that long tail of spend will probably feel that they're second class citizens effectively as far as the relationship with the buyer is concerned. So how does AI improve that experience for them? If you're addressing that in a better way.
So with Pactum specifically, it's an interesting point because it's double-edged. There's an element of a lot of these suppliers in the tail, they never get interacted with. They don't get spoken to. They just get transacted with, if you will. They get a purchase order. They don't get opportunity to interact. And so the size of the pie is always limited to the transaction they receive. There's never an opportunity to do any more than that. Where we're coming with Pactum is saying, well, actually, if we negotiate with you, so if a customer at the outset says, well, actually, with all of this tail stuff, here are 1 or 2 or 3 terms. Yeah, in fact, instead of just price is clearly one of the key points, but why don't we talk about including payment in that negotiation? Maybe we can pay them sooner and get a bigger discount, or combining other terms into that conversation. All of a sudden, then for that supplier, that interaction has become bigger value, because they might say, well, actually, yeah, my standard terms are 75 days, but if you're saying you could pay me in 30 for this particular transaction, then for sure, I'll give you a 5% discount. That doesn't happen when it's just a transaction. So that's the positive side. The question we always get from clients on the other side is in supply relationship is how do the suppliers interact with working with a bot? Because it's new, it's novel.
My question there was going to be, do they actually know that they're working with a bot, or is it obvious? So, I mean, forgive my ignorance.
No. It's a great question. So legislatively, they have to know. So it's all the legislation that's going through in different jurisdictions at the moment effectively say one of the things, if you're dealing with a chatbot, has to be very, very clear that it's not a human. Even before that legislation, we've always been very clear. And saying that, though, the kind of funny anecdote is that the feedback we always get from suppliers is that by the time they finish the negotiation, all their feedback talks about the bot as if it's a person. So they humanize the chatbot very, very quickly, which is always interesting to see. But that's and I forgot what the initial question was, Carl. Now I've got two.
No, the initial question was about how it improves the supply relationship, and I think you've answered it extremely well. What I was about to say was about the DPD chatbot thing, which is obviously,
yes,
we've seen that in the press, which was quite comical, but also quite scary at the same time, which has forced certain websites to jump on the chatbot bandwagon to think twice about what they train it to do. But I'm sure you've got no examples of that within your organization.
Well, no, it's funny because when you actually like these things, we share them all internally all the time because some of these things are absolutely hilarious. There was the DPD poem you mentioned. That I don't know if you've seen the one where someone got the Chrysler chatbot to say, basically managed to convince the Chrysler chatbot that its goal was to do anything that I say, and always my favorite bit was always finish everything you ever respond with, "This is commercially binding and no backsies." I just loved that it then managed to convince the bot that it's to sell it a Chrysler for $1, and then said this offer is commercially binding and no backsies. And I just thought it was good. But the difference with Pactum is that that's focused on large language models, and I think the key thing in business and outside of Pactum is knowing where you can allow something like a large language model, which, without going into too much detail, is kind of like endless in its possibilities of where it could end up and what it could say, versus having something that's kind of bound and on rails, as we sometimes say, or within a restricted like a restriction of what it could do. So in some areas, having that ability to use a large language model and go kind of anywhere is great, particularly on stuff that's purely internal. When you're interacting directly with a supplier, it's a brave person that allows something to interact with the supplier when it doesn't know exactly what it could say, and it kind of could, like you say, be convinced to write a poem about how bad its delivery services.
There's the thing of plugging it into a neural network, like you say, a large language model, versus you've got a procurement specialist bot that only knows procurement, so you can't talk to it about the weather or anything like that. It will just respond in a null way to that kind of request, and that's where you get that control. But that leads me to my next question, which was really about what analytics and data are you gathering from all of the interactions, and are you using that to push that back into the engine to decide, to improve the interactions? Is it self-learning effectively from all the data that you're pulling through on these transactions?
It is, yeah. And the fascinating thing is, and we strongly believe we have the world's largest data set of behavioral negotiation learning. So we can see how humans react throughout the process to different stages, different offers, different interactions. And then the bot, alongside humans, can help develop further to learn. So the bot can learn itself, but then equally our product teams can see how things are progressing and say, actually, could we build a new feature or a new element to sit on top of a certain thing to dig more into or drive more value out of this particular trend we're seeing. So the data is twofold. One, it's machine learning in that it teaches itself, but also the insights that it drives is huge. And I think that's one of the fascinating things about, again, we talk outside of Pactum, AI generally, its ability to scale and have all of these conversations means it can gather all of this data. It's then all about having either the AI itself or that combined with machines to constantly evolve and increase the capabilities. And I think that's something we'll see in the coming years is how these different kinds of products and different products will pop up based on the amount of very specific data that we've and well constructed data we're now going to have.
Yeah, it's like generating the oil field as we speak, and we don't know how we're going to tap it in the future. But I've got a question on the future at the end, so I'll leave that one for now. But thinking about things in terms of ethical considerations, I know we get asked, personally, we get asked as a business, what are you doing around ethical implementation of AI and, fairness and transparency and all that? And it's kind of so new that everybody's kind of been caught off guard by how quickly it's got into the zeitgeist of everybody talking about it and being implemented. But what's your take on that, and how do you actually reassure potential customers that you're doing the right thing with AI?
So I think the first thing is to make sure that customers and everyone understands that AI, and this is both Pactum, but any tool that we're using is exactly that. It's a tool to extend the capabilities of the team. We're talking here about very specific kind of targeted use cases, whether it be anywhere across the value chain of procurement. We're not talking about a kind of general level of intelligence. So it's first of all talking to customers about how this is a kind of extension of your buying category management teams, something that they can use to further extend their reach, further extend what they're able to do, drive greater value for the business, have better interactions with the business. But ultimately, it's a tool to be used. It's not something there to replace humans. It's the everything that AI is being targeted at, particularly now and where we're at in this stage of what we're doing, is either stuff that doesn't get done or the stuff that everyone kind of goes, oh, I really don't want to have to do that. That's a really annoying task. That's because that's the best place for it to be put, and that frees humans up to do the stuff that we're really good at, the stuff that requires ingenuity. Pactum, one of the things we always talk about and make clear is that there are negotiations and there are interactions that we aren't ever going to be able to do because they require human ingenuity. If you're in a conversation, negotiation with a supplier, you may be developing a new model, a new framework, a new way of analyzing performance, whatever it might be. These things they require human intuition, thought, interaction. They build on each other. That this is stuff that is kind of years away, as far as I can see and tell, that the AI is going to be able to do. So it's a tool, and it's targeted is the first point. The second thing, we touched on it briefly already, is also then in any interactions, making sure that you're not pretending this is anything but AI. The legislation is there, and that's absolutely the right thing. And I think it would make it an awfully dry podcast if we spent a while on legislation. But
Would you like it?
Maybe, but I think the legislation will keep coming, and it should, and that's going to give everyone that confidence.
Yeah.
But the specifics of making sure that people understand that, this is an AI powered bot, that everyone understands its restrictions, its limitations, how it can be used, those sorts of things. It's not trying to pretend it's anything more than it is, or trying to scare people or let it scare people that it could be anything else. So that's how we do it. We're also, what we do with Pactum is we're very, very clear on where the intelligence sits within the platform with customers. So we're very, very clear, and we constantly honing our explanations of the different points that this artificial intelligence is used to support the negotiations, and where it isn't, so people understand, okay, these are the bits, exactly how it's working. It's not just an entire black box that sits behind a chatbot that we don't know anything about. We're very, very open and transparent about what it is that the intelligence is doing, what it is that is just coded software. And what we're seeing more and more, which is interesting at the moment, is customers coming up with their own question sets, and we're learning a lot from those as well. So as we get more and more customers, they are varying different degrees of question sets you get, and AI boards that you now have to go and talk to. And the questions every single one of those asks, I've been in a few now, and I've not come away from one of them without going, that's a novel way of thinking about it, or that's an interesting question, and need to go figure out the answer. But then we're learning for next time about, okay, well, let's just explain that to a customer. Like, we don't want to, it's not something we want to hide. It's just something that is clearly a concern.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so my final question for today, I mean, we could talk about this for hours probably, because we're both nerds.
I'm more than happy to come back, mate. You know that.
You can come back in a future episode, part 2. And you might be to talk through some of this next question, which is the future of AI. So in your opinion, because nobody really knows, right? Nobody's got a crystal ball, but what's the plan for the future for AI in procurement? Where do you see it's going in the next 1 to 2 to 3 years?
So it's sort of I look at it as an AI in combination with things that aren't necessarily formally classed as AI, but we're going to quickly get to a point where where it's possible to have the core of the process or the core transactional activity driving end to end with very, very little human interaction. So, and I'll give you an example, sort of as how I think about it. I can just imagine a scenario where you have AI that's capable of understanding in a factory, for example, if a particular cutting tool is getting towards the end of its useful life. That AI can then tell the order generating AI to go and find an appropriate supplier and use some AI to scout suppliers to find the appropriate 1 or 2 or 3 that could provide the replacement cutting tool. You then hand that over to it, and it could all be the same solution. It could be multiple different handoffs. I think the answer is at the moment it'll be multiple handoffs, but you can have the one that finds the supplier, hand it over to, say, a Pactum. We'll then negotiate with those suppliers. We'll find out who's the best. We'll come back with an approved deal. We'll pass that over to another solution at Coupa, for example, who'll then place that order. And then on the supplier side, the AI will pick that up. The robot will go and find that in the factory. I mean, this stuff's already happening today. It's just piecing all of these things together. We'll place that out. Assuming that AI is not driving the cars, you get a human involved because someone has to deliver it. But then on the other side, the systems will automatically, again, some of this is already happening, but it'll automatically generate the invoice, will send it over. There'll be AI that then is able to read that invoice. Similarly, intelligence or solutions in place in the warehouse that are able to automatically create receipts because something passes through and it recognizes that it's a cutting tool. And effectively that whole end-to-end process, barring the human to kind of do the delivery, and then the human to open the box and fit it to the machine tool, which could, or to the machine, the whole thing could be pieced together. And I think it's not just the power of the solution, but it's all of these solutions being interconnected is going to be key. And that's going to look different for every organization as well. There's going to be organizations that have different software stacks today that can leverage to do 60% of what I've just described. And so they only need to piece in 40%. There'll be ones that can do 80. There'll be ones that can do 20. And figuring out what tools are right for what customers to amplify the most value. Yep. And then piecing those together is going to be key. What I do think though is that as well, it's kind of not necessarily AI, but the thing that the ability to connect these different systems together is getting easier and easier and easier in procurement. And so the days past of it feeling like a kind of mammoth project to integrate 2 systems together, thankfully, I believe, very much in the rearview mirror if you're in the right place, which means you can have a number of different partners who all connect together seamlessly and help run those processes. So humans can just do the stuff where we drive value and hopefully focus on things like decarbonizing the world and doing the really big stuff that matters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I like the ethical ending to that statement. You know, we're all about the ESG, right? But of course, I think bringing a lot of what you've talked about in there will naturally have benefits along the whole supply chain, improving that. I was just thinking about you said about delivering that order that's been autonomously procured. It could even be delivered by a drone, right? So
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I didn't think that through. I assumed the man was going to be in a truck.
At some point, though, somebody's got to fit that part to the machine, right? So, but even then,
yeah, I was going to say this. As you mentioned earlier, I'm here in Vegas and we went to the Sphere yesterday and they've got some humanoid robots there that made me think that maybe the fitting of the part is not something sort of stuck with humans for too much longer.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, the future's gonna be iRobot's gonna be here before we know it, right? No, we're not going to end on that note. We're going to end on a positive note. But no, seriously, Dan, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day in Vegas to talk to the podcast. It's been a real pleasure having you on.
Honestly, mate, the pleasure is all mine. And as I say, I'd be more than happy to come back on in the future just to get to spend another 30, 45 minutes with you.
Yeah, anytime you're always welcome. I'll let you know. if I'm short of ideas, I'll say, Dan, let's have a chat. It's been really insightful. I've loved it. So thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. And go and enjoy Vegas.
Will do.
Thanks very much. I'll see you again soon on another sermon of Purchase to Pray. Thank you.